Hey guys, before we jump into this episode, I just want to give a quick forewarning that this episode we had some problems recording. So you'll notice partway through early on that the quality kind of jumps real quick. So it's because we were having problems with our recording software and we had to jump to a backup. So you'll notice a small difference in the quality. And before we jump in, meaning I didn't tack it on the end of the episode, I just want to give everyone a heads up quick that you can follow us at Atlanta Sea Colony on all social medias, which would be Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and you can find us on atlantaseacolony.com and also colonizetheocean.com. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining us on this episode, and enjoy.
Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jules and Brendon Traxler.
Welcome to the Colonize the Ocean podcast. Once again, my name is Adam Jules. I am one of your handsome co-hosts, and with me is my less handsome counterpart, Brendon Traxler. And Brendon, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Today we have an awesome guest with us. He has so many accreditations that it's just, I'll go over a few of them, and then we're going to let him talk about himself. But he's the founder of SCUBAguru.com. He has countless diving certifications. He's the author of 10 Mistakes Divers Make and How to Prevent Them. He's the host of the Dive Locker podcast and the League of Extraordinary Divers podcast. His name is Tec Clark. Tec, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's really cool to be with you guys.
So, Tec, tell us, your background and how you kind of came to be. Like I said, you have so many different qualifications, so many certifications when it comes to scuba and diving, and you just have this vast education. So tell me kind of your history and how you got to all the milestones that you've reached so far.
Yeah, well, it started as a kid. I was just gazing into the water all the time off my grandfather's fishing boat, and instead of bringing the fish up and watching them kind of go through their last gasps, I wanted to be down there with them. And that was a passion of mine since I was as young as I can remember. And so snorkeling and skin diving and free diving were all parts of what I grew up with down here in South Florida as a kid. So I was always around the ocean. I began my first diving right off the beaches here of Lauderdale by the Sea at the age of 12. Then went through my scuba certification classes and then became an advanced diver. Then I went to the University of Florida and I had to drop a golf class. And I'm sitting there and these guys are saying, hey, would you like to take scuba? I'm like, hey, I'm already a scuba diver. And they said, well, what level are you at? And we get down to it and I sign up for the the assistant instructor course at the University of Florida. And that literally was the start of my kind of passion of what it meant to take people underwater and show them what the underwater world was, teach people how to dive, supervise divers. And so that started me. So I became an instructor at the University of Florida. That was 1988, a long time ago. And with that, it was on from there. I borrowed the money from my mom and she said, it's always something you could fall back on, thinking it would be just this side gig. And it turned out to be my career. So I went on to work for the University of Florida Academic Diving Program. I ran it as the managing director, then went to the YMCA National Scuba Program where I was an intern, then a couple years later ran up the ranks and became the national director. So I've had a lot of things along the way, worked with Broward Sheriff's Office, doing dive rescue, and then also being a forensic dive accident investigator. And then ultimately where I'm at now which is with the Nova Southeastern University, with their academic diving program where I direct that. And we're a very large academic diving program. And then, as you already said, I got a couple podcasts out there and SCUBAguru.com. So yeah, I've had a pretty distinguished career. It's been really awesome. But the best part is that I do what I love. I do diving. And that's just the coolest thing ever.
how did you realize that you could turn this passion into a career? Like, at what moment were you thinking, this doesn't have to be a side gig. This can be my main source of income. This can be what I do with the rest of my life.
It really was never a flash moment like that. I remember sitting in my instructor training course and a guy came in and he said, I sat in these very seats, and if you told me someday I would own one of the largest dive shops in Florida, I would tell you you're crazy. And I sat there and I listened to that and I thought the exact same thing. There's no way I'm going to go anywhere other than, enjoying this time here at the university, and maybe I'll meet some girls. And so that was about it. Right. But then our mentor at the University of Florida, he was like, you guys don't understand how good you are. You all need to do things. You need to write for SCUBA magazines. You need to speak at SCUBA conferences. And so we wouldn't have done it other than that our mentor was pushing us in these areas. And sure enough, we wound up doing that, myself, my colleagues. But then I took a real passion towards it. And that was what opened up doors. And once doors started to open, because you had a platform, people heard you, people knew, who you were and what you have to say, and that you got a head on your shoulders. And, it started to open doors, and that's what happened. And one thing would lead to another, and I'd go, oh, wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. And that was the stair-stepped approach that my career took.
Yeah, I was going to say, one follow-up on that is interesting to me is, one of my passions is people fulfilling their vision and their dreams. So with that in mind, what is something you could say to somebody that maybe listening to this and they enjoy scuba diving, but they want to do more? And what steps would you give them, or what would you say to them to maybe give them that little extra oomph to pursue that?
The biggest thing that I can say is to continuously learn and continuously engage. And the one thing that it's going to do the most in that area is if you engage with others that are at levels higher than you. In our industry, do not be shy to go up to absolute legends or rock stars in our industry, or the biggest fish in the pond, and say, hey, I want to learn from you. I want to be mentored by you. It's very flattering to people, and they'll kind of go, well, I was that way too. Everybody started off with just that beginning C card, and what's this and what's that? And you had to learn. And a lot of times we learn by the expertise of others, especially in a sport that is like ours, new equipment, new technology, new standards, new everything that comes along. And how do we keep abreast of that? A dive center, if you look at it, is like 6 businesses in one, between the travel and equipment rentals and equipment repair and tank filling and sales and education. All of these things are huge. And so when you think about it, you're just not going to be a master at all of those things overnight. So the best advice I would have is to just literally latch on to somebody that you believe is an icon or a mentor, or somebody that you like their attributes and you like their passion especially. And that will put an absolute fire in you to grow. But you have to have that in you. You have to be a sponge to soak in what other people have to offer.
Don't want to segue too far on that, but when you're talking about having the largest dive shop in was it Southern Florida, or is it all Florida?
The guy that was at our instructor course, it was all of Florida. Yeah, he had one of the largest ones in Crystal River.
So, what was it like working for an organization of that size?
Well, I never worked for him. He actually came in and gave us a guest presentation for our program. But I can tell you this, at the University of Florida dive program, when I went through, we were the largest dive program in the country. And when I ran it, it was the largest. So we'd put through about 1,200 students a year going through our dive training, which at the time was absolutely remarkable for a college university dive program.
I wanted to jump back in because scuba is so foreign to me. Now, Brendon has a history with it and is certified, but to me, I live in the Midwest to where there's just really nothing exciting that you could go scuba dive unless you just want to dive in a muddy lake. So right. It's all foreign to me. So tell me, How many different certifications is there, and do you have them all?
Oh, dear goodness. The thing is that like our industry has kind of an alphabet soup of different organizations. And for the most part, we follow some of the, most common standards that are shared from a recreational scuba training council, which is a big council that oversees just our sport and comes up with minimum standards. So, agencies deviate from that to the better. They'll increase the minimum standards some, and some have better platforms than others. Some have better books and materials than others. But for the most part, it's really not about the agencies. It's about the instructor. And the instructor is the one that brings to the table all of the skill sets that someone would learn from. So it's really more about picking a quality instructor and a good class than it is about the agencies. Yes, I'm a multi-agency certified instructor, and that's a really cool thing, that, different agencies are for different niches and specialties within our industry. And I've been blessed to be able to be a part of many of them. So there's great organizations out there, but no, I'm not a part of all of them. No, definitely not.
So what's the most intense training you've had to go through with in your scuba career?
Well, I think cave diving is probably some of the coolest, where you're going back, and in your training you keep going a little bit deeper, you keep going a little bit further back, you add more equipment. So when you progress from an intro or a cavern course and you get into things like the full cave course, now all of a sudden you're embarking into some really robust stuff, and those dives can be pretty intense. So when you're 110 feet down and you're 100 and something feet back in a cave system, and you take off all your gear and you shove it through a hole, and then you wiggle through that same hole to get to the other side, and you kind of don't know what's on the other side, and all you're following is this little line that's going into the abyss, and you squeeze and squeeze, and then you make it out the other side, and you put your gear on, and you realize, if I needed to get out right now, or if I had a problem with my equipment right now, ooh, that's a long way back. So I think that's some pretty intense training right there. And then I would have to say, being a public safety diver, that was also really intense, where we're having to jump into canals and find cars and, potentially people or weapons or evidence and stuff like that. And you're in some of the worst bodies of water that you can imagine. And you're donning your scuba and you're going to go in. So some of the things that we dive in here in South Florida, the canals and whatnot, make your ponds in the Midwest look like Tahiti. So I would say that's some pretty intense training too.
When you're talking about cave diving there, some of the most peace I've ever had was underwater. It's just, there's something about being under, but as soon as you start about cave diving, I could feel my heart beating, the anxiety of that. Kudos to you, but I think the claustrophobia and everything like that would just get to me. Yeah,
it's definitely not for everyone. And, the older I get, the more I have some sensibilities about me that go risk, reward. Nah, I like fish. We're just going to stay on these reefs out here. That works for me.
I just don't, I'm going to try to avoid going off on a tangent, but like, I talked to Brendon about this previously, is that I'm a huge true crime junkie, and I had just listened to a podcast about, where was that place, Brendon? Vortex Springs, where the guy went missing in a cave or something like that, and it terrified me. Like he was diving in a underwater cave that he wasn't certified to be in, and like just listening to it, I'm just like, this sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, look, it is to a degree. There's a sobering reality about it. When you are trained and you are equipped and you have all of the right credentials, training, and equipment to do it, it's just like anything else. We're taking the human body that is not meant to be underwater. There's nothing about our bodies that are calibrated to be underwater. And all of the things that we talk about that work, quote unquote, underwater are just simply survival mechanisms. So when you take a look at it in that respect, we are using technology and technique to survive underwater. So when you do it and you do it right, the risk is mitigated. The risk is pulled down. The risk is always present, but it's the bad stuff. It's the people that say, I can do this and I don't need that training, or I don't need this proper equipment. And that's where you go in and like a cave system, and you can literally see finger marks on the limestone walls where people had clawed their last breaths in agony to try to get back to the surface or survive. And it's a reminder. So I think that is a really sobering thing that you can see, that just also puts it in perspective. Hey, we're not meant to be down here, so we better darn well do everything that is going to give us the best edge to explore this wonderful environment.
So you kind of created a good segue for the next question. You talked about, how, the human body is not meant to do the things that, that you're trying to do. And you talked about the technology and the equipment that you use. Obviously, you've probably used a ton of different types of equipment and just seen a lot of different types of stuff. So what do you kind of see as the future for underwater technology and diving equipment and just underwater tech in general?
Oh boy, that is such a huge, it's such a huge question that I don't think I have even the mental capacity to tell you what it's going to do. But I can tell you this: the stuff that Jules Verne mastered, it created, just the thoughts and the sketches and the renderings and the ideas. When we fast forward to where we are today, it's not ludicrous like it was back then. And so when we take a look at what is possible, I think that is where it gets almost confounding of what is possible. We have a big diving show called the DEMA Show. It's the Diving Equipment and Marketing Association. It's our big trade show. It's in the United States, and we just went this year, and there was a new technology that was a rebreather that, instead of wearing it on your back, it was basically built into a helmet. And that got a ton of buzz because it looked so space aged, and it looked so, almost like from the abyss. And I know you guys were talking about that in your last episode. And that's how it looked. You're like walking around with this helmet. And so you think about what kind of freedom does that have and everything like that. Now, there was a lot of discord at the show about, is this thing safe? Will it work? What are the actual applications to it? What are the hazards? There was tons of questions that were coming out. But at the same time, there's this vision of what this could be like in the future. So I think that's where we really don't know. We simply don't know. And when you look at things like newt suits that are out there to be able to go to, record depths and stay at 1 atmosphere without the compression crushing in, that technology has been around for a long time. Will that be improved? And then you look at rebreathers. That technology has been around for a long time, and it continues to be improved. So as we start looking at all the different things, it's just mind-boggling to think about where we could be. So I could not point to one thing and say this is the future or that's the future. There will be a lot of trial and error along the way. I guarantee that. And there will be things that look like they are the coolest things since sliced bread, and they are going to not go well in the marketplace for one reason or another. And we see that quite a bit. But it's going to be the revolutionary people that come up with revolutionary engineering designs to sustain life underwater that are really going to lead the way to the future of exploration underwater. There are so many people right now that are saying, really, can't we get away from these heavy aluminum cylinders on our back? Isn't there a better way? So someday that will change, and our dive boats will look different, and our equipment configuration will look different, and our bottom time will look different. It's just going to need some variations all along the way.
You mentioned the helmet. We follow DEMA pretty close as well. Yeah, and so I saw that, and I was like, that thing is cool. But my first question was, where's my redundancy with that thing?
Right.
Exactly. I was like, it's cool, but I want some redundancy with that thing.
Yeah.
But you're talking about how the tech hasn't changed for some of it hasn't, some of it hasn't. And, we're big on the underwater habitat aspect of the thing. And, that, so same thing, the tech hasn't really changed in 60 years for that.
Yeah, right.
It's one of those things where it's kind of died there for the longest time, except for Aquarius and Jules. There isn't much to show for it anymore. What's your experience with those? Have you been to either one of those locations?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aquarius, I've only been free diving on it. So went down and free dove and waved at the people inside and that kind of stuff, and just got some really cool time around the outside of it. It's awesome. It's really cool to see. I would love to see the inside someday. Jules Undersea Lodge, on the other hand, is something that I've had some good time with. In the mid-'90s, I was able to be a part of Scott Carpenter's Man in the Sea program.
Yeah.
And so I went down there for that, and we did all kinds of the different programs, and one of them was the overnight stay at Jules. And I think that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my career. We were able to, get on the hookah system. You suit up, you barely are kitting up. You're just kind of wearing a harness in the hookah system, a little bit of weight. And then you go through the lagoon and you enter into the old La Chalupa, Chalupa? I think that's the original name. Yeah. Yep. And you enter into it in the bottom, and you come up and you're in the wet room, and you're sitting there like, you're going, this is kind of cool. This is cool. And here's the bunks over on the side, and you got the bathrooms in front of me, and then you got the galley over to the left. And so you hang up all your stuff, you shower off, and then you're in this underwater habitat, right? And you immediately go to the windows, and you're looking at the fish, and you're looking at everything out there. Well, we had a great time. One of the coolest experiences was like, they've got all the videos down there. So we're watching Jaws while we're in a habitat at, 20, whatever it is, 28 feet, something like that. And, you're watching the fish at night because now the light is outside, and you got all the shrimp that are getting attracted to the light. Now the fish are coming to the shrimp. So you got all this entertainment happening. And then for us, they delivered a pizza, which was hilarious. And then one of the other cool things was that when you cook microwave popcorn, this I thought was fantastic. You cook microwave popcorn at depth, and it's popping, it's doing its thing, everything's normal. But the moment that you open up the microwave, your bag of popcorn is shrink wrapped around all of the popped corn. So, because it's under pressure.
Sure.
Which was hilarious. I had no idea that would happen. And then I think my coolest thing was in the middle of the night, I woke up my buddy and I said, let's go out. Let's go for a dive. And so sure enough, it was 2 a.m, and we go out, we get our mask fins on, put the hookahs on, and we just go cruise the basin at night. And there was a thunderstorm, a really bad thunderstorm up top. And all we did was sit on the bottom of the lagoon and look up at a thunderstorm that was just happening the whole time. It was epic. And then, you go back in when you're done, when you're cold, whatever, and you warm right back up and sleep and wake up the next morning and look at the fish in the floor of your habitat. They're just sitting there because they're hiding, and just hanging out. And it was just one of the coolest experiences I've ever had.
I got goosebumps just your energy talking about how cool that is. Somebody, I've been dreaming and designing for 26, 27 years on underwater habitats and what I want to create and all that kind of stuff. So to hear somebody to walk through like that, it's very cool. So thank you for that story. If nothing else out of all this, I mean that for me personally was very cool.
It is. It's so cool.
And then talking about that, so with that experience, the underwater habitat movement, the seasteading movement seems to be moving forward. There seems to be a lot of push behind that, but there's the underwater people in that underwater realm that are looking to try to colonize the ocean via underwater habitats and stuff like that. It seems to be coming around. There's been tons of designs over the years. Some big ones that have always puttered out for one reason or the other. Do you see that as a viable future? Is that going to happen, or do you think that it is just a pipe dream?
I absolutely see it as a viable thing in the future. Absolutely. Absolutely. When we're talking about, Elon Musk putting billions into the exploration, colonization on planets and everything, that's a cool concept. But I think that there's other people that just have a different feeling. And that different feeling comes from what can we explore underwater? What's that like? And what does it mean? I think that when we look at colonization, there's kind of two ways to go with it. And I think that in the camp that the Musk group is really into is that the Earth is being depleted, and perhaps it's better for a future and sustainability and life and growth to be in another place. And so if you're in that camp, then going to underwater exploration, underwater habitation really might not be the thing, because you're thinking, oh, look at our oceans and how polluted they are. Why would I want to live there? So the opposite side is more in line with where I'm at. I'm an explorer at heart. And because I'm an explorer at heart, I love the underwater world. I love everything about it. And the peace that you feel when you go diving, I believe is the same type of peace you can have when you're surrounded by water, when you're underwater, you're 60 feet, 100 feet, whatever that depth is. But then you're surrounded by nature and you're observing. And whether that's scientific or just to relax and have recreation time, it's the same. It's the same life that can inspire one to feel relaxed and feel at ease, and it can inspire another person to solve cancer. So right. I think that we still don't know so much about the underwater world that to make scientific bases down there makes sense. I think to continue exploration makes sense, but I also think that recreation also has a sound purpose with the kind of hotel model and that type of thing. So if you were to ask me, I would say absolutely. Now, the locations, of course, are going to be key, because I think that, when you're talking a saltwater lagoon in Jules, it's awesome. And what I just described was a great time. But I didn't tell you much about the fish life. It's mangrove snapper because you're literally next to the mangroves. Whereas Aquarius, you're out in the ocean, and it's truly reef around the lab. And that's cool. So they're in two different habitats, ecosystems, that is. And so, I think that where they're located is going to be one of the trigger points of people. And so when you also look at some of these things that are the resorts that are being built where they've got these little underwater viewing domes and things like that, those are extremely popular. So why? Because people are wanting to connect. People want that experience. So, I think that in time, what you're going to see is when you look at what's going on with oil rigs and oil platforms out there, they're amazing. The structures and the engineering behind them are amazing. And then to do underwater type of shuttles or pipes and things like that to transport people, I don't think that the future is going to be that people have to go out on a dive boat and get in SCUBA to then access a habitat. I truly believe the future is going to be They're going into a chamber at the surface. That chamber pressurizes them. They're taken down. They will never know the difference. And that's really where it's at. And if a person never wants to get wet, they never have to get wet. So I do believe that there is a future in that. It might sound wild. It might sound Jetsons-like, but I firmly believe that there will be.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And especially the last point you're making there, it has to be without SCUBA, because you alienate too much of the world.
Exactly.
If you leave it that way. And, my whole vision has always been, I want my grandma to be able to visit that. And she's 91 years old. She's not going to, and vice versa. So I 100% agree with you on that.
You don't have a lot of faith in your grandma if you're just saying that she can't suit up and get down there, Brendon. So maybe you shouldn't tell her that.
Yeah, well, she already told me she doesn't want to go either way. So, and she's not the best candidate. But the point is.
Right. Okay, so tell us about your project with Reef Ministries. What's that about?
Well, Reef Ministries was put on my heart when I had a really strong conversion experience kind of late in life to, just really get a firm understanding on my faith. And that was a pivotal point for me to be very aware that all of these gifts and talents have not just happened. And this was something that has been kind of planned for me before I was born. And so when I really raised up in my faith and that became a big part of who I am, I started to realize, wait a minute, since the day I started teaching SCUBA, I had students saying, I feel closer to God underwater than anywhere else on earth. And before I was a believer, I would just high five the person and go, yeah, I know, it rocks, right? That's really cool. That's really cool. But once I became a true believer, I then saw it differently. And I went, there is an absolute reason why we feel closer to God underwater than anywhere else on earth. In fact, there's dozens of reasons why we feel that way. And it's definitely a spiritual, deep spiritual connection that comes out. And there's awe. And that awe of this all of a sudden you're putting in a perspective of, boy, I'm not as significant as I think I am. And boy, I'm a little bit more feeble than I am on land. And boy, look at all of this diversity. It really becomes spectacular. And when you look at it that way, all of a sudden diving can become a worshipful experience where you're literally sitting there thanking God for this beautiful creation that you get to be a part of and enjoy. So that led me to say, hey, is there a way that we could take people snorkeling and scuba diving and interpret the underwater world as the handiwork of God? And so we founded Reef Ministries in 2008, and we just basically took church groups and homeschoolers out to reefs and went scuba diving and snorkeling and just educated them on that the underwater world is the handiwork of God, and why this is to be and why this can be such a worshipful experience. And it was really neat and a deep thing. So since that time, we've evolved into being more educational. So people from around the world aren't going to come to Fort Lauderdale just to go snorkeling, on a trip or two. But what they can do is take the same tenets that we talk about and we express when we're going diving and saying, look at this. This is a really great evidence of God's creation right here, right here, right here. And we put that all in an online program. So now at reefministries.com, there is a course that you can take that is how to see the underwater world as the handiwork of God and make it more of a worshipful experience. It's pretty cool.
How's your response been to that?
It's been good. I'm not great at marketing, so I wish that I market it better or more. But the people that do get it and do take it, they resound. It resounds well with them, and they come away with that going really cool. And we've had some people even put it up in their dive shops and just have it scrolling on a loop in their dive shop for
Very
people
cool.
to see. So yeah, it's been a neat thing to see.
We've asked a bunch of questions here that we thought we'd like to know about, but is there anything that that's personal to you, or that you'd like to talk about that maybe we haven't covered, or you might think people might find interesting?
No, I think that what you guys are doing is cool and ambitious. And the thing is that if people were to, just a couple decades ago, say we're going to have an electric car and this is what it looks like and this is how it works, and when it takes revolutionary people to make things happen, to share a vision, and then other people get behind that vision, and there can be somebody out there that just is sitting on fortunes of money, but they have no direction, no passion, no path. And then all of a sudden something kindles a fire in them. And I think that what you guys are talking about with habitation underwater and that type of thing, it really sounds like it almost is too big to happen, and it's not. And it's truly not. And I just think that it's pretty cool the way that you have a passion for it. I can watch things on TV, and I know your episode on the different shows and everything. I can watch those and get like this cozy feeling. Like I want to be in there. Okay, I get that there's monsters around and that their power just went out and, whatever. But I still get this cozy feeling like I myself would love to be in a habitat and go diving whenever I want to go diving. And, there's just something about that just really, really gets to me. When it's Cousteau's birthday every year, I send out a picture, happy birthday, Captain Cousteau, but it's when he's in the lab. I forgot the name of their habitat.
The conch shelf?
Yeah, and I think he's sitting. So they're all at a table.
Yep.
And they're all drinking, like 4 bottles of wine are on the table, and every one of them is smoking. And you just sit there and you're like, no way. They were really just like drinking wine and smoking cigarettes in a habitat underwater. How cool, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that. Maybe a fly wouldn't have lived there. But anyhow, I would have loved to have been around just to be a part of that. There's something about it that there's a fantasy to it, but I truly believe that we are close to a fantasy like that being realized. I do think that we're close.
Very cool.
Well, I want to keep Tec around just so like we have people, someone that says nice things about us all the time, because that's kind of nice to have.
Well, and I will also agree with Adam that Sea Lab 2021 is the coolest show out there. And, and I am going to defend that because I cry. I mean, I literally have tears coming down my eyes. My family shakes their head at me.
Yep.
And they don't get it. They just walk away and they're like, oh, Dad's watching his stupid show again. And that's what they say. And I'm crying. And I'm like, no, seriously, that guy right there, that guy. And Murphy, literally, this is hilarious. Murphy is the last name of my mentor that I grew up in.
Wow.
And he was military background, buzz cut, and white hair.
That's
so
crazy.
The similarities are great, except that, Hank lost his marbles, whereas my mentor didn't. So, but the similarities are just so funny there on that. But I can't get enough of that show. I love it. Absolutely.
The Bizarro episode is my favorite one.
Which one?
The Bizarro episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. So would you put your brain inside a robot body, Tec?
Exactly. You're right.
It'll be 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As big as they can.
Yeah, and then, just the horrible disfiguration that they do. I love when something goes wrong and somebody breaks something, the way that they are able to make their hands look all wretched or legs or everything. And the person's fine the next episode. It's just hilarious. And the kid that runs around, the shark. I mean, there's too much there to unpack right now. I mean, this is a whole episode just on 2021, really. You could just do a whole episode.
Yeah, we'll bring you back for an episode that we'll just talk about Sea Lab 2021. I think that would just be a great episode to do.
Exactly.
Well, in saying that, before we close it out, I mean, tell people how to check you out and what you want them to check out, and just give yourself the biggest plug that you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, for those of you that are into your faith and all, yeah, the reefministries.com is definitely something to check out, and that course that's on there for God's Underwater World. But for those of you that are just dive junkies and you love diving, you can't get enough of diving, I would highly recommend listening to the League of Extraordinary Divers podcast, because I interview legends in the diving industry and their stories are crazy cool, and to hear the stuff that they've done, it's wild. And so, we're asking, what's your craziest stuff, what's your funniest stuff, and these stories just come on and on and on. So there's wonderful people there to listen to. And then for anybody that's a dive professional that's listening, that's the Dive Locker podcast. That's where I talk to dive professionals about pertinent topics that work for them as a dive pro. So those are the things. And then, yeah, at scubaguru.com, there's a bunch of articles on diving and how to be better at things underwater. And it's just a resource website for divers and pros, so you can check all that out.
Well, thanks again, Tec, for making time. And as people will probably notice when they listen to this, because I'll have to edit it kind of weird, thank you for being patient with us, because we had a lot of technical difficulties right in the beginning of it that kind of,
no problem,
messed with it. So, but thank you again for, coming on. And I hope we can bring you back for whether it's just we want to keep talking about scuba, or if we do want to do a Sea Lab 2021 episode or something like that. Brendon, you got anything else you want to close out with them?
No, I just appreciate your time. I appreciate, once again, like Adam said, appreciate you being flexible, and I'm just honored to have you on the show.
Oh, great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, and all the best to you.